The piercing shriek of a fax machine tears through the quiet morning space. A thermal paper slowly crawls out of the giant machine placed in the corner of the room, carrying the bold text, Morning News, April 15, 2026. A man in a modern suit, holding a steaming cup of coffee, casually tears the paper off to read. He steps out of the house. On the street, not a single person is bowing their head to the blue glow of a mobile phone. Instead, long lines of people patiently wait in front of public phone booths or local network computer stations protected by bulletproof glass. A pitch-black armored car, rolling heavily through the intersection with a flashing sign, Central Data Bank, keep 50 meters away. You are in the year 2026. You want to listen to a newly released song by an idol singer? You have to line up at a record store to buy a limited edition optical disc. You want to send a secret design drawing to a partner in Tokyo? Boot up a massive superfax machine worth as much as a sports car and prepare to pay a fee of up to $50 for each transmitted page. There is no Wi-Fi icon in the corner of the screen. There is no Google search bar. There is no such thing as the global internet. You might be imagining a backward, slow, tedious, and primitive world like the Stone Age. But the truth will shock you. This internetless civilization is not weak at all. On the contrary, it possesses underground technological systems so terrifying and complex that they could permanently solve 90% of the worst crises our real world is currently suffering from. Welcome to the paradoxical perfection of a disconnected era. To answer this seemingly sci-fi question, we are not soaring in fabricated stories. Everything you are about to witness is built on thousands of pages of declassified research documents from the U.S. Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, macroeconomic system analysis reports from the central bank, and especially the in-depth economic technical analysis work titled, The Architecture of Disconnection. We will go back in time to the turning point of history, the 1960s. At that time, the U.S. Department of Defense funded the ARPANET project to create a network capable of surviving nuclear attacks thanks to packet switching technology. In our reality, it is the seed that birthed the internet. But let's tear up history's draft and take a different branch. Government officials suddenly cut funding for ARPANET in the early 1970s because they deemed it too expensive and dangerous if it fell into the hands of the public, or the U.S. military decided to permanently seal this technology in top-secret national underground bunkers. Our world officially loses the common TCP/IP protocol. Computers can never connect into a global network. Instead of a flat ocean of information, the digital world is fragmented into independent, closed, and extremely fortified oases. Without the World Wide Web, the world will be dominated by national network empires. Forget about a network where you can easily access websites from as far as Africa or Europe with just a mouse click. This 2026 world uses massive and completely isolated, national utility networks, exactly how the power grid or water supply system operates. The most primitive model of this system is France's Minitel in the 80s, but now it has evolved to the ultimate level. Each country will develop an exclusive intranet. France has Super Minitel, the UK has Pre-Stelmax, Japan builds the Captain X network, and the US is fragmented by the internal networks of giant corporations. The fatal flaw of this system is that crossing digital borders is impossible. These networks do not share a common coding language. You cannot send a message from a US device to a French server. To do that, the signal would have to go through border transit stations, where the data is decrypted, printed out into text, and then manually re-entered by digital customs officers into the system of the network on the other side. The digital world has border walls as high and solid as physical borders. This creates a massive paradox that causes many to argue, this is a paradise for closed rulers, but an absolute safe fortress for citizens. In this world, the government and the corporations owning the network are the only ones holding the master switch. No internet means no freedom to randomly disseminate information. There are no global social networks to incite the crowd, no Arab Springs, and certainly no platforms to expose large-scale national secrets like the Edward Snowden case. Freedom of speech might be significantly suffocated within these digital borders, but in return, humanity receives an unprecedented privilege. The rate of transnational cybercrime, ransomware devastating hospitals, online scams, or cyberbullying is almost zero. Cybersecurity becomes physical security. A hacker organization in Eastern Europe cannot possibly take down the power grid of a US city simply because there is no cable connecting them. To hack a system, you have to struggle through armed defense layers, physically break into the building, and plug a physical drive directly into the internal server. When distance cannot be erased by a mouse click or an email, we enter the golden age of super fax machines and massive telex systems. Have you ever wondered if there is no Gmail or chat apps, how do multinational corporations communicate with each other? The answer is fax machines and telex networks will be upgraded to a scale and power unprecedented in human history. From the basic telex network of the 1930s, an automated system sending text messages over telephone lines, the technology will evolve into high-speed automated text transit superstations. Modern offices in 2026 will not have rows of silent screens, but instead the continuous, rushed clattering and the signature smell of thermal paper from automated electronic typewriter arrays working at full capacity. And for image documents, blueprints, or legal files, the super fax machine is the undisputed king of the corporate world. The Fax Group 4 standard, supported by regional internal fiber optics, allows the transmission of detailed technical drawings, medical X-ray images, and classified documents with resolutions up to 800 dpi, comparable to the most expensive laser printers. The speed is still very fast, but its nature is point-to-point communication. A transmitted document has only one recipient. It cannot be widely distributed or publicly posted for millions to see at the same time. This inadvertently eradicates the existence of massive fake news amplification machines. But don't celebrate just yet, because who will decide what is real news in a world without social media? Information power will rest entirely in the hands of powerful print newspaper newsrooms and internal cable television systems. A manipulative or false news bulletin will have no way of being exposed by a wave of outrage on the internet. Citizens receive information one way, slowly, and heavily censored. The psychological manipulation of the crowd on a global scale disappears, but manipulation on a national scale becomes more sophisticated, irresistible, and profound than ever. The polarization of truth between nations becomes an invisible iron curtain. In the shadows of the lack of hyperconnectivity, finance and banking are imprisoned within harsh physical limits, yet inadvertently create an instantaneous crash-proof real economy. The internet is the miracle of modern finance, where billions of dollars can move across continents with just a touch on a screen. But in this timeline, currency carries a truly massive physical weight. Imagine the trading volume of the modern world crushing a paper-based payment system. Central banks cannot clear payments with smooth computer command files. Instead, they must maintain clearing cities, where hundreds of thousands of office workers work day and night, wearing fully covered uniforms, just to cross-check, stamp, and sort billions of paper checks using giant mechanical machines running continuously to the point of smoking. International money transfer is no longer a matter of seconds. It is a complex, expensive logistical campaign lasting 3 to 5 business days via encrypted telex message networks, and ultimately still has to be cleared with physical gold or foreign currency. When night falls, highways and railways worldwide witness the majestic scene of armored convoys, heavily armed guarded train cars, continuously transporting tons of cash and bonds between financial institutions to balance the books at the end of the day. The stock market is not manipulated by high-frequency trading algorithms run by AI automatically buying and selling millions of shares in a millisecond. Wall Street in 2026 is still a chaotic, sweat-drenched sea of humanity where brokers scream, wave their hands, and use through-wall pneumatic tube systems to send paper buy, sell orders across all floors of the central building. Financial crises caused by software glitches or flash crashes are entirely impossible. The economy moves sluggishly, with high friction, but possesses a real-world foundation incredibly solid against virtual storms. And when information streams cannot fly across oceans via internet fiber optic cables, humanity witnesses the mighty rise of the sneaker net, the empire of sneakers and suitcases holding hundreds of kilograms of hard drives. Do you think that without the internet, humans would stop transmitting massive amounts of data? Entirely wrong. When the bandwidth of internal cables cannot shoulder high-resolution movie files, satellite geological maps, or medical databases, the world gives birth to an extremely prosperous new logistics industry: physical information couriers. Imagine a commercial pilot flying a night flight from New York to London. His most important carry-on luggage is not jewelry, but a special shockproof suitcase made of carbon fiber, containing dozens of ultra-large capacity hard drives, carrying thousands of terabytes of software data, system patches, and classified research documents. As soon as the plane touches the runway, this massive data vault is handed over to couriers riding heavy motorcycles or sprinting through jammed streets to plug directly into the client's local servers. What is the craziest paradox here? The total transmission speed of a Boeing 747 cargo plane fully loaded with hard drive crates flying across the Atlantic actually far exceeds the average fiber optic internet bandwidth that a small country in the real world uses. The only difference is its latency is measured in 12 hours instead of a few dozen milliseconds. Maritime and aviation logistics corporations do not just transport food or machinery, they transport the very lifeblood of information to feed closed tech empires. While hard drive suitcases are flying in the sky, the global commodity supply chain on the ground has to operate in a blurry darkness. If you are a small business in this reality, cross-border selling is a luxurious and absurd dream. The internet in our world is a great democratizing tool for commerce, allowing a craftsman in Vietnam to sell directly to a housewife in the US. But in 2026, without a global network, the digital class barrier becomes an impenetrable fortress wall. Only giant megacorporations with tens of billions of dollars in capital can afford to lease expensive satellite links or lay their own submarine cables to establish private communication systems for their empires. These corporations monopolize everything in a vertically integrated model, from production and transportation to retail points. Cargo containers moving on the ocean are completely blind in terms of signals. There is no globally connected real-time GPS tracking system for customers to check waybills on their phones. The location of a multi-million-dollar cargo block is only known when the massive transport ship pierces through the fog and docks, and the old captain steps down to hand a thick paper cargo manifest directly to the port management. The loss of goods, shipping delays, and massive warehousing costs make the price of all items sky-high, but it forces humans to consume consciously instead of indulging in impulsive shopping with blind clicks. And as consumer demand slows down, the way humanity entertains itself also takes on a completely different shape, more vibrant and profoundly physical than ever. The entertainment industry of 2026 is not dictated by cold recommendation algorithms. Video rental empires like Blockbuster did not go bankrupt but rose to become global entertainment megacorporations with massive malls spanning cities. On Friday nights, families do not sit passively in front of smart screens to scroll through thousands of bland movies. They drive to the store, physically touch sparkling optical disc cases, and chat with store managers for direct reviews. Music goes through a great renaissance as vinyl records, cassettes, and CDs are the only way to own a track. Artists do not have to scream and complain about receiving only pennies from online streaming platforms. They make millions of dollars selling physical products and organizing sold-out tours. As for the gaming community, esports still exist, but with a magnificent and loud appearance. There are no cross-continent online matches. Tens of thousands of gamers bring bulky desktop computers, giant monitors, and dozens of meters of cables flocking to stadiums to participate in extreme-scale LAN party feasts. The connection between humans does not happen through a soulless microphone, but through echoing cheers, celebratory hugs, and sweat dropping on the keyboard. Entertainment emotions in this world are 100 times more intense, authentic, and tightly knit in the community. However, the price to pay for that physical romance hits directly at the speed of civilization's progress, especially in science and education. Did you know that the CERN Nuclear Research Institute in Switzerland is where the foundation for the global computing network was created with the initial goal of helping scientists share massive amounts of data instantly? In this timeline, that project was thrown into the trash. Take the Human Genome Project as an example. With billions of DNA base pairs needing analysis and cross-referencing, the inability of international laboratories to work simultaneously on a shared online network turned this project into a logistical nightmare. Analyzed genetic data had to be printed on paper or saved onto magnetic tapes, then packed in lead boxes to protect against radiation and sent via International Air Express to research institutes on the other side of the hemisphere. The pace of medical research, the journey to find life-saving vaccines, or clean energy solutions is delayed by decades, even centuries. Scientific knowledge becomes a luxury item concentrated only in a few elite universities and top-secret government labs, where there is enough money to purchase and operate massive supercomputers. The democratization of knowledge, where a child anywhere can access the World Encyclopedia for free, never exists. Public libraries become massive but silent fortresses of knowledge, where students have to line up for hours to borrow a yellowed printed book instead of downloading a file in the blink of an eye. Speaking of system attacks, we must talk about the underworld in a 2026 devoid of connection. If in the real world, a teenage hacker only needs to sit in a basement flooded with snack wrappers, using a few lines of malicious code to extort a general hospital, then in this hypothetical world, the concept of a hacker has completely changed. There is no remote entry point. The server systems of multinational corporations and governments are physical fortresses impenetrable by keyboards. Therefore, tech crime syndicates must evolve into a paramilitary force, blending extreme coding skills with combat infiltration capabilities like action movies. You want to steal the rival's new weapon design data? You cannot send a phishing email containing malware. You have to assemble a team consisting of electronic lockpicking experts, mercenaries equipped with camera-disabling weapons, and brilliant hardware engineers. They have to rappel down from the company tower's roof, bypass security corridors, take down guards, and directly plug a massive data cloning device straight into the connection port of the central server roaring in the basement. Cybercriminals are forced to face the real danger of blood and steel. This drives the number of data theft incidents down to an extremely low level, because the risk cost for each execution is a price paid with one's life or life sentences in the most state-of-the-art prisons. Deep inside the social structure, the absence of a global network reshapes the entire psychological architecture of humanity. Humans in this reality possess an incredibly long and resilient attention span bandwidth. When not thrown into an endless loop of 15-second short videos or meaningless heart-dropping notifications on a screen, the brain returns to its most primitive yet powerful biological state. Deep focus capability becomes the societal norm rather than a rare skill. In coffee shops, you don't hear piercing message notifications or see the sight of a table of four where everyone is glued to a separate screen. They discuss fiercely, argue intensely, waving their arms to defend their views on an article published just this morning. The fear of missing out, FOMO, the psychological disease devastating the younger generation in the modern world, is completely eradicated. You cannot see what others are doing halfway across the world. You are not pressured by fake perfect lives painted online. Your world shrinks to the radius of the neighborhood you live in, your workplace, and relationships you can touch in flesh and blood. Love and romance are also salvaged from cruel dating apps, where people swipe on screens to judge each other like goods on a supermarket shelf. Flirting requires real courage to step up and strike a conversation with a stranger, sending passionate handwritten letters, and enduring months waiting for a reply, a slowness that creates the utmost appreciation. But the boundary between classic romance and species survival is shockingly blurred when we hypothesize a respiratory transmitted global pandemic attacking this internetless world. This is the biggest paradox that might make you rethink everything we've praised so far. In our world, digital solutions save the economy by allowing billions to work remotely, study online, and shop for necessities without stepping out of the house. But what if a pandemic breaks out in this network-deprived world? The work-from-home option is impossible. Office buildings, factories, and trading centers would be forced to shut down completely or maintain operations under horrific infection risks. The global economy would face a standstill and utter paralysis. Millions could lose their jobs within the first week of lockdown because there is no cloud system to maintain workflows. However, on the flip side of this historical debate, epidemiologists offer a much more shocking hypothesis. In a world without a global network governing automated flight coordination systems and complex logistics chains, cheap flights and the massive mobility of mass tourism could never explode to such a degree. Limited communication entails sluggish physical movement. Therefore, as soon as a strange disease appears in a city, geographic isolation and information barriers between national intranets would cause borders to automatically slam shut decisively. The pathogen would likely be locked down and extinguished right where it was born before it could board international flights and spread globally within weeks, like the brutal reality we experienced. No connected network means no highway for transmission, turning a global biological disaster into a local outbreak easily contained by old-school hard lockdown measures. The prospect of an Earth devoid of global connectivity systems is not a catastrophic regression into a dark age, as we often delude ourselves into believing. Rather, it is a world defined by a remarkably fair and equitable exchange. We must trade away breakneck speed, ultimate convenience, and the capacity for boundless reach in order to reclaim control over our lives, inviolable privacy, and the robust physical boundaries that shield us from chaos that spreads in the blink of an eye. This civilization of friction is more cumbersome and slower paced, yet it stands firm and resilient against invisible upheavals, such as cascading systemic collapses, toxic disinformation, or wars that cripple core infrastructure. Having witnessed the astonishing persistence of national utility grids, the power of massive fax networks, colossal trains hauling physical cash, and a world where human beings are compelled to interact face-to-face, looking directly into one another's eyes to communicate, what is your verdict on this choice? If, at this very moment, a red button sat on your desk, capable of completely erasing digital connectivity and transporting all of humanity into a timeline of closed-loop telecommunication networks, would you possess the courage to relinquish the convenience of the smartphone currently in your hand to live in a world that is less toxic, safer, and more grounded in reality? The analysis presented thus far represents merely one perspective, grounded in historical data. The rest depends entirely on your own personal lens. Leave a comment below and let me know your decision, for I am genuinely curious to discover how many people would be willing to trade away our current world. And if you found this journey of tearing up reality intriguing, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future content. We will continue to shatter historical boundaries and delve into humanity's wildest scenarios in our upcoming videos. Thank you for joining us, have a wonderful day, and I look forward to seeing you again on our next intellectual journeys. The grip of a fragmented cyberspace doesn't stop at how we communicate, but it reshapes the entire concept of truth. Step into a New York newspaper newsroom in 2026 of this world. There are no editors burying their faces in screens monitoring click-through rates or real-time keyword trend charts. Instead, there's the deafening noise of giant industrial printing presses, the pungent smell of printer's ink mingling with cigarette smoke. In a world without social media where anyone can become a citizen journalist, the Fourth Estate, traditional print media and cable television, become the gods dictating reality. The news cycle isn't measured in seconds or minutes, but by the 24-hour cycle of a daily newspaper or the evening news broadcasts. If a political scandal breaks out, there won't be a leaked video spreading at the speed of light on social media platforms to instantly outrage millions. Instead, it must pass through an extremely strict gatekeeping system. Powerful editors and media moguls will decide whether the story deserves to be on the front page, or if it will be buried forever. The elite have enough time, measured in days, not minutes, to manage crises, cover up information, and steer public opinion before tomorrow's paper hits the stands. You might think this creates a peaceful, less outraged society, free of toxic, cancel culture. The audience is not manipulated by addictive algorithms. But the truth is much darker. The crowd is peaceful, but they are manipulated absolutely and systematically. Citizens lose their right to public debate. Injustices are hidden behind carefully edited bulletins, and the only truth you know is the truth the masters of the printing press want you to know. Now, try stepping out of your house and finding your way to a newly opened restaurant on the other side of town. No Google Maps. No AI voice giving turn-by-turn directions. No global GPS positioning system connected to a handheld device. Urban traffic in 2026 operates entirely on physical signs, shortwave radio, and human memory. The profession of a taxi driver becomes one of the most intellectually demanding and skilled jobs, exactly like the legendary knowledge drivers of London, who must memorize tens of thousands of streets without a map. There will be no billion-dollar tech corporations providing ride-hailing services. Traditional taxi companies hold an absolute monopoly. The paper map printing industry is a massive goldmine. Every driver must have a thick map booklet in their glove compartment. When you get lost, the only way is to pull over, roll down the window, and ask locals for directions. This sounds cumbersome, but it creates a mandatory and interesting social interaction. Humans are forced to communicate, to open up to strangers. Cities are not designed for self-driving cars or AI-controlled real-time traffic light systems. Traffic police must stand guard at major intersections, using internal walkie-talkies to report traffic jam conditions back to local radio stations, which then broadcast warnings to citizens in cars. The lack of digitized data makes the city operate loudly and manually, yet profoundly human. Furthermore, because there are no home-sharing platforms, the traditional hotel industry absolutely dominates the downtown areas, preserving the urban planning structure without disrupting the rent prices of native residents with a wave of explosive spontaneous tourism. The biggest difference, and perhaps the thing many of us in the real world crave the most, is the concept of absolute free time. In the internet era, the boundary between work and personal life has been completely erased. Your boss can text you to fix a report file at 11 p.m. Work emails chase you into the bedroom, the bathroom, and even during family vacations. You are always in a must-be-connected state, and that breeds a global-scale psychological burnout syndrome. But in 2026 of this fragmented reality, the 9 to 5 office hour is an unbreakable law of physics. When you walk out of the office door at 5 p.m., work is officially closed behind that door. The Minitel system or company local networks do not connect directly to your home unless you are an ultra-high-ranking official. No email can chase you down. No work group chat is calling your name. When you go home, you truly, completely, and absolutely disappear from the company's radar. You want to contact me for an urgent project? Call my home landline, and if I don't pick up, everything will have to wait until 8 a.m. the next day. This disconnection bestows upon humanity an invaluable asset, peace of mind. Time at home is truly dedicated to family, to reading a paper book, tending the garden, or simply sitting on the balcony looking out without being tortured by thousands of meaningless notifications. The FOMO, fear of missing out, state is replaced by JOMO, joy of missing out. You don't know what your colleagues are doing, you don't know how luxurious your rival's vacation is, and that lack of information inadvertently becomes the greatest psychological healing therapy for mankind. However, do not let the peace of personal life deceive you. On a macro level, the non-internet world is a fierce espionage battlefield, where the technological Cold War is fought with flesh, bones, and blood. Today, nations can steal terabytes of hypersonic weapon research data, semiconductor chip designs, or classified files just by planting a malware, Trojan, through the anonymous internet network. Everything is done in silence, without gunshots, from closed rooms tens of thousands of kilometers away. But when national internal networks are physically isolated, spies cannot operate remotely. You want to know what kind of rocket your rival's space research center is building? You must send real humans to infiltrate. Espionage returns to its most primitive and deadly skills. Agents must carry microfilm cameras, use local radio jamming devices, bypass high-voltage electric fences, and confront armed security forces. Stealing a sophisticated microchip blueprint requires an intelligence campaign lasting months, costing tens of millions of dollars, and carrying extremely high human casualty risks. High-tech goods like semiconductor chips or microprocessors become dangerous smuggled items no less than weapons. Smuggling syndicates organize night ship voyages across the ocean to transport crates full of computer hardware from one country's network to another for reverse engineering. National borders are not just geographical boundaries, but heavily guarded digital trenches, where data leaks can only happen if a human is willing to betray their nation to carry a suitcase containing magnetic tapes through a customs checkpoint. Let's shift the perspective to something that shapes the consumer economy: advertising and fame. In the real world, you just need to search for the keyword "running shoes" on Google, and instantly, thousands of shoe ads will follow you across social media platforms for weeks. Tech corporations collect thousands of data points about your preferences, locations, and even your heart rate to shove products into your face right when you are most vulnerable. But in 2026, without a global network, the entire trillion-dollar micro-targeting advertising industry simply does not exist. Your privacy is an inviolable fortress. Companies do not know who you are, what you like, or what you secretly desire. So how do they sell? Welcome back, the golden age of super catalogs and the art of manipulating physical space. Giant retail corporations will periodically send to your doorstep product catalogs thousands of pages thick, printed in glossy colors, weighing several kilograms. It's like a miniature shopping mall resting neatly on your coffee table. Consumers will flip through every paper page, mark the items they like, then pick up the landline to call the switchboard to order or fill out a purchase form and send it via mail. The streets will be flooded with giant billboards, glowing with neon lights, fighting for your attention with direct and provocative messages. The profession of KOL, key opinion leader, or influencer, on social media has no ground to survive. The concept of global fame is reserved only for Hollywood movie stars or outstanding politicians. An ordinary person cannot suddenly go viral overnight thanks to a short dancing video. Fame in this world demands real talent, the recognition of powerful media organizations, and a name-building process spanning decades through national television broadcasting and print press. Human value is assessed through tangible achievements recognized by the local community, rather than through soulless and illusory-like counts on a digital interface. When knowledge isn't freely shared on a global open encyclopedia like Wikipedia, information becomes an expensive and monopolized power. As we analyzed, elite universities and governments hold massive supercomputers and data vaults. But humanity's instinctual thirst for knowledge never surrenders to digital fences. This inadvertently spawns one of the most fascinating and purely cyberpunk underground phenomena of this hypothetical world: the rise of dark libraries and brainpower smuggling syndicates. Imagine rebellious student groups, disgruntled engineers in major cities secretly organizing large-scale data copying rings. They break into the internal systems of research institutes, spending weeks downloading the latest scientific papers, software source codes, or medical lectures. All this data is compressed into thousands of CD-ROMs or disguised portable hard drives. From here, an underground distribution network springs into action. These disks containing pirated encyclopedias are sold at exorbitant prices in electronic black markets, handed over in dark corners of coffee shops, or hidden inside hollowed-out novels sent through the mail. Possessing a massive database on new agricultural farming techniques, microchip blueprints, or uncensored historical documents becomes an act of hoarding illegal intellectual property. The police have special task forces dedicated to hunting down and dismantling these pirated disk copying workshops. Education is no longer an easily accessible privilege, it turns into an underground information warfare, where those thirsty to learn must risk their own freedom to touch a fraction of a thousandth of what a 10-year-old child in the real world can search on Google in just 3 seconds. The severing of networks not only reshapes knowledge but directly dictates the boundary between life and death in the medical field. Today, your electronic medical records are stored in the cloud, allowing any doctor at any hospital to access your drug allergy history or vital signs the moment you are wheeled into the emergency room. But in 2026 of the fragmented world, your medical record is a thick stack of papers or a physical memory card stored exclusively at your local hospital. If you suffer a severe traffic accident while traveling in another state, the ER doctors will be completely blind about your rare blood type or complex medical history. Making a long-distance phone call back to your home hospital to request a faxed copy of the medical record can rob you of the golden moments needed to save your life. Furthermore, the Organ Donation Coordination Network cannot operate automatically through national data matching algorithms. When a heart is donated, the internal system can only scan patients waiting for transplants in the nearby region. If the most compatible person happens to be in a hospital network belonging to another state, the connection is almost impossible to make in time. The healthcare sector relies heavily on rapid response emergency helicopter fleets and extremely high-frequency radio channels dedicated to military and medical use to transmit urgent information across network borders. Rural surgeons can never perform remote surgeries via robotic arms controlled by top experts from New York. Healthcare becomes extremely polarized. The rich flock to ultramodern medical centers in megacities, where powerful internal server networks support computer-aided diagnosis, while remote areas bitterly accept a healthcare system based on manual experience and the traditional judgment of doctors. Have you ever thought that no internet would make the earth greener, because we wouldn't have to waste trillions of kilowatt-hours of electricity to run the massive server farms of Google, Facebook, or mine Bitcoin cryptocurrencies? Once again, historical logic offers a harshly contrasting conclusion. Disconnecting digitally leads to an ecological disaster in a completely different form, the slaughter of the jungles and the overloading of transportation infrastructure. When information cannot fly through the air as digital data packets, it must be materialized into printed paper or optical discs. Billions of bank checks, tens of billions of pages of maritime logistics manifests, massive sales super catalogs, daily print newspapers, and endlessly running faxes in every office in the world. The paper and wood pulp manufacturing industry becomes a monster with an insatiable thirst for raw materials. The rate of destroying primeval forests to make printing paper in this world far exceeds any worst-case scenario in our present. It doesn't stop there, because the supply chain is blind and lacks optimization by cloud algorithms. Fleets of trucks, cargo ships, and passenger planes, carrying tons of data parcels and physical CDs, must travel continuously on inefficient routes, burning a massive amount of fossil fuels. Greenhouse gas emissions don't come from heat-dissipating data centers, but spew directly from the exhaust pipes of a massive logistics army struggling to transport things that could have been transmitted by light through fiber optic cables. The environment is not saved at all, it is merely enduring a more primitive, noisy, and dusty devastation. Despite being divided by digital iron curtains, bound by physical limits, and strict censorship, there is one thing that the governments or megacorporations in this timeline can never extinguish: humanity's instinctual desire to connect. Humans always want to reach out beyond their limits. And from the darkness of fragmentation, the most spectacular tech rebellion movement in history will sprout. Imagine quiet nights in the suburbs. In old car garages, retired telecom engineers, amateur radio operators, ham radio, and genius hacker minds refuse to surrender to reality. They stealthily solder complex circuit boards, building giant homemade antenna arrays pointing straight up at the night sky. When telephone lines are censored and borders are locked tight, they find ways to throw signals into the sky. By using the moon bounce technique, reflecting radio signals off the moon, or hijacking the forgotten ultra-shortwave frequencies of old weather satellites, they attempt to establish illegal, fleeting communications with nameless friends on the other side of the ocean. They transmit short text codes, poems, uncensored news snippets, or simply a message: "Are you there? We are here." Even though the speed is slower than a snail, even though the signal is staticky and constantly tracked and dismantled by intelligence agencies using specialized broadcasting vans, this underground non-governmental network persistently survives. It is the bizarre predecessor of a bootleg internet, built not for commercial or control purposes, but woven by the burning desire for freedom of souls longing to tear apart the loneliness of a civilization imprisoned in digital oases. When there are no social media platforms for politicians to hurl insults at each other or conduct diplomatic campaigns via short statuses at 2 a.m., the entire political landscape of 2026 takes on a much more naked, primitive, and brutal beauty. Forget about election campaigns using AI to generate millions of micro-targeted scripts aimed at individual voters based on their secret fears. Presidential or parliamentary elections are not decided by armies of cyberbots spreading fake news. Political power returns to its core value, the ability to speak before crowds and physical presence. Candidates must embark on exhausting cross-country journeys, standing on armored cars or rudimentary wooden podiums in town squares to persuade thousands of citizens looking directly into their eyes. Live televised debates become life-or-death national events, where a drop of sweat on the forehead or a hesitation in the voice can decide the fate of an entire political empire, because there will be no online media teams behind them to instantly edit videos and whitewash their mistakes. Societal polarization still exists, but it is divided along actual geographic, ethnic, and class lines, not hallucinatory filter bubbles created by mindless algorithms. Citizens gather in local pubs, factories, and stuffy union meeting halls to debate the future of the country, making politics a truly collective activity, full of friction and emotion, rather than anonymous cursing comments on phone screens. And in that suffocating physical world, the boundary between the light of the law and the darkness of the underworld is also completely redrawn, creating a golden age for both cunning criminals and brilliant detectives. Today, a smart camera system equipped with facial recognition AI can track a suspect from one end of the city to the other, while mobile phone location data will betray every move of a murderer. But in this hypothetical 2026, the concept of a digital footprint is around zero. Without a national data network automatically connecting police stations, a criminal who commits a bank robbery in Chicago can entirely escape to a remote town in Texas, change their name, and live a new life without ever being discovered, as long as they don't leave actual fingerprints on paper archives. Detectives cannot pull videotapes from thousands of security cameras on the cloud. They must go back to the most classic investigative skills, wearing out shoe leather on the streets looking for witnesses, cultivating networks of informants at the bottom of society, and using cork boards pinned with pictures connected by tangled red yarns. Justice moves slowly, arduously, and with high risks. Unsolved cases pile up in dust-filled archives, but in return, humans retain the absolute power to truly disappear. The ability to start over by shedding the past is a profoundly humanistic yet dangerous privilege, a privilege entirely stripped away in our 24/7 surveilled era. The absence of lightning-fast viral trends on the internet also fans a fierce flame of deeply edgy and original underground subcultures. In our world, a song or a dance can garner billions of views in a week, only to fall into permanent oblivion a month later to make way for another shallow trend. But when there are no short video platforms shaping tastes, pop culture fragments into thousands of incredibly loyal small niches. Welcome the dominance of zine culture, self-edited magazines, printed by cheap photocopiers, hand-stapled, and distributed secretly in underground music clubs. Rebellious youths exchange cassette tapes recording secret gigs, creating hand-to-hand networks stretching from one city to another. Street art, massive graffiti murals covering the walls of abandoned factories replacing the Facebook newsfeed, becomes the most powerful manifesto of the younger generation. They don't create art to beg for virtual likes from strangers halfway across the world, they create to release energy, to assert their existence to the people living in the same neighborhood. The bonds of these underground communities are so tight they cannot be broken, because they are built on physical trust, face-to-face meetings, and shared ideals forged in severe information scarcity. Even humanity's vision reaching beyond the Earth is pulled back by the gravity of digital division. The dream of global cooperation in space exploration shatters completely. Without a common data transmission line, building and operating a magnificent international space station with the joint effort of dozens of countries is a technical communication nightmare. Instead, space remains forever a cold battlefield of solitary superpowers. Space programs are heavily militarized, top secret, and operated by closed networks. Transmitting high-resolution image data from Mars to Earth requires massive ground receiving stations, but that data will be kept hidden in military bunkers for years instead of being broadcast live for millions to admire on personal computer screens. The night sky of this world doesn't have thousands of artificial telecom satellites flying in trailing light chains like the Starlink system, but is only sparsely dotted with spy machines silently surveilling each other, keeping humanity always in a state of high alert yet permanently bound to the surface of the mother planet. So, when we piece all the fragments of this post-digital civilization together, the overall picture that emerges is not a bleak gray of decline, but a prism reflecting our deepest fears and desires. The choice between a reality full of hyperconnectivity and a hypothetical world of complete disconnection is actually a choice between the two boundaries of extremes. On one side is the speed of light, infinite convenience, vast knowledge but accompanied by chaos, the risk of cascading collapse, large-scale psychological manipulation, and the total loss of privacy. On the other side is a cumbersome, slow, high-friction world where knowledge is imprisoned, physical limits crush progress, but offering absolute safety from network phantoms, returning to humans' quiet focus, the profound romance of distance, and the authenticity of physical touch. The super fax machine screeching out top-secret blueprints, armored convoys carrying mountains of cash in the night, CD-ROMs smuggled across borders like contraband, all these are not just bizarre images of an abandoned branch of history. They are ironclad proof of humanity's fierce survival power. Whether imprisoned in the most primitive technologies or liberated by the most modern networks, humans always find a way to survive, to love, to rebel, and to establish an order of their own. The question is no longer whether a world without the internet is better than the current world, but which ecosystem you truly belong to. Are you a creature needing to be fed by an endless stream of information, willing to expose yourself to invisible risks in exchange for reaching out globally? Or deep down in your soul, are you a tired soul sick of frantic connectivity, yearning to step out of the office door at 5 p.m. just once, cut off all communication signals, immerse yourself in the endless quiet space of physical reality, and say goodbye to the rest of the noisy world? The truth is, history did not branch off, ARPANET survived, the internet enveloped this earth, and we do not have a time machine or a master switch to turn back the past. But understanding the absence of the global network helps us realize the true value of both what we currently have and what we have permanently lost. It is the sharpest wake-up call about how we need to use this superhuman tool, rather than letting it manipulate and swallow the human ego. Close your eyes for a second, listen to the rhythm of life around you, and ask yourself whether you are truly connecting, or just lost in a boundless ocean of data. The power to decide how you exist in this digitized era, ironically, depends on your very ability to disconnect. Leave your deepest thoughts in the comments section below, share this video with friends who are trapped in the vortex of mindless algorithms, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button to join us on journeys peeling back the most brutal and magnificent truths of humanity. See you at the next boundaries of history and the mind.